Hi everyone, welcome back to Stamp with Anna, and today I have a second card that we made at card class this past weekend, and this is another Thanksgiving card, and this, I just absolutely love this card, and you're not going to believe how easy it was to put together. So the first thing that we have, I'm going to show you what we have for paper. I have, excuse me, the base is very vanilla thick, and it's A2 size, 8.5, 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. Then I have a piece of Cajun Craze, 4 by 5 1/4, and then I have a piece of regular, very vanilla, 3 3/4 by 5, and that's going to make all of our bases. I have scraps of, I'm just going to show you here, scraps of mango melon and scraps of crushed curry, and this one here we're going to make right from our base. So what I'm going to do, what I'm going to use for stamp sets is the colorful Seasons stamp set, and the only thing I'm going to use here is this leaf right there. I'm going to use the coordinating dies that are seasonal layers, and they have all these great dies in there that coordinate really nicely with the colorful Season stamp set. And the ones that I'm going to use are these two large leaves. What I'm going to do in all three of my colors, Cajun Craze, excuse me, melon, mango melody, and crushed curry is, let me show you right here. I'm going to run these through my Big Shot. This one here, I'm going to run through using my precision plate because it's so intricate. And this one here, I'm going to run through just using my regular base platform. So I'm going to get all my die cutting done, and I'll be right back. Okay, I have all of my pieces. Here are my two mango melodies, my two crushed curries, and my two Cajun Craze, and you can see they were just cut right out of this mounting piece, and no one's going to see that because I'm going to mount over it. So the first thing I'm going to do is put these together, and you can do it a couple different ways. If you have fine tip glue, that would work perfectly. If you don't, and you have these excuse me, glue pens, this works great too. But what I'm going to do, let me see where my silicone pad is. What I'm going to do is on the back of my intricate leaf, just want to make sure I have flow here. I want to put a dot of glue on the tips, at least, at a minimum, on the tips of each of my leaves, and right here in the center, and then some along here. Now the reason I'm using a liquid glue instead of a, like that double-sided sheet you can run through. The reason I'm using liquid glue is because with the liquid glue, once you put it down, you have a couple minutes to line your pieces up. If you use that sticky tape, you don't. Once it's down, it's down. And so this way I thought, because this has, especially with this tiny little stem here, I wanted to have all the time that I needed to be able to get that lined up perfectly. So now I'm going to do the same thing with my Mango Melody. And I think this is probably the first time I've used Mango Melody since it came out. I don't know why, it's such a great color. So again, I'm going to just put some glue on the ends of those leaves and along the stem, and I'm going to attach, got a little piece there, and I'm going to just attach this. All right. Give it a little press. Line these up nicely. Okay, and then I'm going to work on my last one here. Again, just on the edges there, because that's where I really want to make sure that it's going to stay. And then the reason I say to do the center one is because you don't want the center to bubble up if you're off just a hair with your lining up. So here we go. All right, and now I'm just going to put these aside. And the reason I did my die cutting first was because I needed that back piece of my Cajun craze. So I'm going to put those aside. Now I'm going to make this piece right here. And I'm going to bring in my piece of Very Vanilla that is 3 3/4 by 5. And I'm using the embossing folder that's called, using the Woodland Textured Embossing folder, and this is not a 3D embossing folder, this is just a regular embossing folder, but it is a large one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink it up so that when I run it through, the background is in crumb cake, but my birch tree is still as close to Very Vanilla as possible. So how I'm going to do that, I have my crumb cake stamp pad, and I'm going to ink up a sponge, and then I'm going to ink up my embossing folder, and I'm going to ink up the side that says Sizzix, and I'm just going to make sure I get good coverage. I don't want to stress over it and pounce on it and just overload it with ink. You don't want that because you won't get the right result. You want a soft result. So now you can't see it that much when it's against this, but when you lift it, you can see that it is colored. And now I'm just going to place my paper on there, and I'm going to go run this through my embossing machine. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. And see how pretty that looks? Because I didn't go overboard with the ink, it's a little lighter than crumb cake, but it makes a nice background, and the birch trees still are very close to Very Vanilla, which is what I wanted. So now I'm just going to assemble my card. And like I said, this goes right over my Cajun craze that had my 2 leaves die cut out of it, and no one will ever know that it's missing those 2 pieces. So now I'm going to attach this to my card base. The next thing we're going to do is assemble the leaves on the card, and I just did it this way. I didn't, no rhyme or reason to the way I chose it to do it, but this is how I did it. Now, when you're attaching these, a couple things to remember is this is grooved, this is raised, and this is debossed. So you want to make sure that you have adhesive on the back of this that's going to hit this birch tree, because if you just put it right here, it's not going to be nice and secure. So you can either just use your snail, or you can use a you can either just use your snail, or you can use some of this glue. So I'm just going to use my snail, because I'm just going to make sure that I get all of my leaf covered. And then for my stem, I'm going to use this, because I know I would never get my my snail to go right on that line. So I'm just going to drop that right there. Then I'm going to do my Cajun craze one. And if these leaves are wide enough that my snail fits nicely, and I know that if I get snail on all those leaves, then my leaf is really going to, on all those parts of the leaf, my leaf is really going to attach nicely to my card, and it's not going to fall off. And again, on my crushed curry one, yep. And I'm going to drop this there. Like I said, no rhyme or reason. I just put them where I thought they'd look nice. Now I'm going to do my sentiment here. And for that, I have a piece of scrap, very vanilla. I'm going to bring in my Pierce mat because I'm going to use a stamp that is photopolymer. My greeting comes from the stamp set Painted Harvest, I believe. Here it is, Painted Harvest. This one right here, gather together and give thanks. So I'm going to stamp that in Cajun Craze. And straight down, oops, straight down, straight up. Now I want to cut that out. And to cut that out, I'm going to use the layering rectangles. And this has a ton of dies in there. You can see that. Now, the one that I'm going to use is this one here. But, as you can see, it fits widthwise, but it's a little long for me. So I'm going to show you how we can make this a tiny bit smaller. All right, I have my Big Shot upstairs, so I'm going to use my big kick, because that's what's down here. So let me get my pieces. I have my magnetic platform. I have one acrylic plate, and then I'm going to line this up so that it is where I want it on the top. I'm not paying attention to the bottom. Okay? And I'm going to run this through. Now, as you can see, it's not lined up, centered nicely. So I'm going to pop that out. And because this die has these stitches, I can just line this up and I can feel the stitches. See, this is, the stitches are right there. I'm going to line that up with this, and I'm going to feel when that stitch is in the right spot. It's going to kind of lock in place so that my stitches will come out where they're supposed to. So I'm going to, I feel like I moved that. Hold on one sec. It does take a minute, but you'll feel it. You'll feel it lock. Okay. All right, and now I'm going to run it through again. And when I take this apart, it's stuck to my plate here. When I take it apart, I have now made myself a small tag instead of having to use the larger one that was the wrong size. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just mount this on a piece of Cajun Craze scrap paper that I have here. I'm going to give it a little border, and then with my snips I'm just going to cut that. I don't usually cut straight lines. It's one of those things that I do not have good luck with. But it worked first time, so hopefully it's going to work this time too. And then I'm going to come in there. And I think that looks kind of straight. So I'm going to add 2 dimensionals onto that. Goodness, my fingers aren't working. I'm going to put that right about here. And now what I did with some linen thread was I made this triple bow using some linen thread. And what I'm going to do is just attach that with a glue dot. Right here on my Cajun Craze leaf. And I think I'm going to just trim this just a tad. All right, our front is done. The one last thing we want to do is the leaf on the inside, because I don't like naked cards. Now, it's always tricky when you're doing the inside. The whole card is done, and you kind of keep your fingers crossed and hope that your leaf, your inside design comes out perfect. So I'm going to ink that up, and right here in the corner I'm just going to go straight down, straight up. Perfect. I'm going to close my ink pad so that I don't get it anywhere else. And there we go. There's a card. Nice Thanksgiving card. And I left the inside blank, so you can certainly write whatever message you want inside that. But it was a lot of steps, and I must say, this cutting these out is the hardest part. But if you were to do it assembly line, you could certainly make a lot of these in no time, and they would really make such an impression on the person who receives them in the mail. If you have any questions at all about this project or any of the products that I used, please contact me through my blog, www.stampwithanna.blogspot.com. And if you don't have a demonstrator that you work with, I'll be certainly happy to send you a copy of the new holiday catalog, which is live through January 2nd, 2020.